There is literally no L larger than ignoring the point and just saying you make a lot of money doing what you do, okay? Imagine if I was debating, like, some angry conservative or whatever, and like, I didn't have a response to what he had to say, and I was like, yeah, well, I have a lot of fun making money on my show, and then I hang up on him. I really, really hope this doesn't get copyright striked. This is Real Time with Bill Maher, who had Ben Shapiro on to talk with Malcolm Nance. Nancy? I haven't seen the segment, but I have seen the end of the segment, and I hope YouTube doesn't strike us before we get to the end.
Let's get back into hard news. I hate it. We're having such a good time, and now we're going to fight. And now I'm going to make you fight again, but it's okay. But I got to talk about the muzzle laws. There's these laws that are been introduced in a number of states to not talk about critical race theory. Now, critical race theory, I must say, to begin with, I hadn't heard the term probably a year ago. Now I hear it every day. I think Americans are just starting to hear it. And I think no one knows exactly what it is. They know it has something to do with race.
The longer I do this, the more I feel that there is an absolute certainty that I'm going to get copyright striked over this. Ooh.
And it's some kind of a theory. Right? How would you describe it? And then we'll ask, how would you describe it? What is critical race theory?
I will admit that I read a lot of critical race theory in law school. So, you know, the work of Derek Bell or Gene Stefanczyk
this
and
is the
Richard
stuff
Delgado.
No one knows but you and 6 other people.
Right. So,
but what matters is what is it practically?
It is possible that he did. Didn't he go to Harvard Law? It was literally started in Harvard Law. He could have taken an elective course on it. That is not impossible.
It's being taught in schools or some form of...
Yes, there's a certain sort of crystallized version of it that is a lot less complex than what critical race theory actually is. But critical race theory essentially argues that racism is baked into all the systems of American society, and that any sort of neutral system is, in fact, a guise for racial power. And so the argument is made by Derek Bell, for example, that Brown versus Board of Education, this is an argument he made in 1990.
That's not quite accurate. It's not that any neutral system is a guise for racial power. It's that the appearance or the pretense of neutrality can be used to disguise racial biases, you know? We talked about this in a previous example, like, for example, poll taxes or the grandfather clause, laws that were put in place to disenfranchise African Americans in the South during Jim Crow, which never actually mentioned race, so they could get away with it, you know? It's possible to affect race-blind racism, because the race blindness is really just a smokescreen or a cover. In fact, that's how racism generally comes about systemically in America these days.
That Brown versus Board of Education was actually a way for the white community to leverage its own power. It wasn't an attempt to end segregation in public schools. Even things that are purportedly good in terms of race, so long as they uphold these broader systems, things like capitalism or things like the meritocracy, these things are actually just guises for power. And so what that boils down to in sort of practical terms is all disparity equals discrimination. If you can see any stat where black people are underperforming white people, this means the system was set up for the benefit of white people, and that white people have a duty to tear down these systems in order to alleviate the racism that's implicit in those systems. When it comes to schools...
Of course, Martin Luther King also believed that. Just, again, keep in mind, if there is a disparity between two racial groups, there are only 2 ways that disparity could have possibly been made manifest. Either environmental or genetic differences. So, if you're of the opinion that black and white people are genetically on par when it comes to the ability to perform in society, which I do, the only remaining explanation for a disparity in their performance, again, on average, between groups, not between individuals, is that there are differences in their average environment. And given the fact that America has a long-standing history of deliberately disenfranchising black people, it makes sense, then, that there may be some lingering after effects that are causing an ongoing environmental imbalance. It's really simple stuff. Like, that's the case for inertial racism in a structural sense. The idea that simply because old biases haven't been mended, modern affected neutrality can still disguise biases. And then, of course, you can make the case for implicit bias, which is reasonable, and explicit bias, which is, again, reasonable, albeit less common than it used to be.
What this tends to boil down to is kids who are white have experienced privilege because the system was built for white people, and we have to change the standards.
Right. Now, okay, well, so Malcolm, you tell me your definition.
Oh, I agree with everything he just said.
Oh, great.
And I appreciate you.
Motherfucker literally just said this, but unironically, in response to a Ben Shapiro tweet.
Being honest in defining of what it's like to be Black American, right? That is, I mean, we're talking about a system.
That's not fair.
You're saying no, I'm just saying I agree with all of those suppositions because they are grounded in truth. Look, when you know, and the funny thing,
I have to say, I'm actually surprised that Bill Maher's audience is inclined towards this guy by default, because Bill Maher is not exactly a woke lefty, you know? The audience definitely seems to be, I guess I would have expected a little bit more impartiality on their side, if nothing else.
the thing is, it's not just African Americans, right? It's also the Scalp Act of 1749, where for $300 modern dollars, you had to cut off the head or the hair of an Indian to prove that you've got them out of the way so they could settle. That's a little bit of American history that people should know about. The Chinese Exclusion Acts of the 1840s. These are things we don't talk about.
Oh, I just want to point out, by the way, the fact that we literally scalped people here in America for, like, mercenary dollars. Not only is that not talked about enough, but if any other culture did that, we would talk about them like they were actual animals. Like, if the practice was being described as it so happened in the history of another culture, we would describe them as like literal, like, savages, you know, alongside cannibalism. But we did it, so.
That's not true that people don't talk about these things. We all did learn about.
You don't want them talked about?
No, that's not true either.
You want to cancel
No,
them?
Malcolm, I'm sorry, you're lying. That's lying. It is lying. I not only I've personally talked about many of the things that you just mentioned. I define critical race theory by citing the actual authors of critical race theory, and you seem to be a pretty good beneficiary of the meritocracy because you have merit, Malcolm. So if you're going to criticize the meritocracy as an outgrowth of white supremacy, then you're going to have to tear down the system that you've succeeded in because you have merit.
So that is an extremely stupid counter-argument. The critical race theory anti-meritocracy argument is basically that meritocracy doesn't actually exist, that it's flawed and biased, and therefore pretending a meritocracy does exist is to implicitly suggest that black people are responsible for their systemic discrimination. What Ben Shapiro seems to be suggesting here is that critical race theorists are anti-meritocracy because they're against the concept of people doing well if they do well. And therefore, if you're anti-meritocracy, you would have to be opposed to your own success. This is a preposterously dumb argument. I feel dumb going over this because I just went over a Ben Shapiro segment, but this just appeared, you know? And I have to go over this.
Not have merit.
You know, when my great-great-grandfather ran away from slavery to join the 111th U.S. Colored Troops and fight against the South, keeping human beings as slaves, he didn't think, you know what, in 150 years, my great-great-grandson's going to have to sit on stage and argue with a guy who thinks all that's bullshit. All right? I'm just saying.
Malcolm.
Okay, hold on 1 second. I actually don't like that argument. The argument that he just made kind of suggests that Ben Shapiro thinks that slavery isn't bullshit, or that, like, the history of... It's not a great argument. It is rhetorically effective, but to be fair, and Ben looks angry after it's made. Look at him. You can hear him over the crowd, too. He's saying, what's bullshit? What's bullshit? Which, to be fair, is a fair follow-up question.
It's bullshit.
Look.
I'm just saying, there is no controversy. The controversy that's made up is people saying that this is being discussed, this is being taught in schools, and that kids should be kept away from it.
That's not true.
It's not even a real controversy.
Malcolm, the fifth largest school district in America, Clark County, just decided that they were going to lower standards with regard to testing because they wanted to alleviate disparities in outcomes. That is an outgrowth of critical race theory.
That isn't at all. If you were to believe that, you would also have to believe that the concept of affirmative action is from critical race theory, but critical race theorists tend to really dislike affirmative action. So that's not like a critical race theory thing necessarily. I mean, that falls under the umbrella of a couple of things. Broad anti-racist action. I will say, however, though, it's a bad idea. I've actually done some research on this. What does it look like when universities, schools, and colleges lower admission standards for people of color in an effort to get more of them in? And the reality is, it doesn't do anything to fix systemic discrimination. It just doesn't. It just does not fix it. I guess it can be like nice. The effects can be nice, but this is one of those problems where you really have to get at the heart of the issue until before you can get results. And by the way, you can get some really, really bad outcomes from that too. First of all, it develops racial animus. Second of all, if you're lowering admission standards, that means there's a possibility that the POC who get in on those lower standards are going to perform worse, which means that you have a higher dropout rate, which means that you can have lower hiring rates after graduation, and all it does is contribute to a statistical anomaly against them. It's not something... maybe there's more data that I could see that would change my mind, but from what I've seen, it's not an approach I favor. Sorry.
Can you draw a straight line to it?
Yes.
Really?
100%. Because when you say that the meritocracy is an outgrowth of white supremacy, and then you suggest that I'm somehow denying...
It's not meritocracy. It's the illusion of meritocracy is an outgrowth of white supremacy. The concept of a meritocracy is good. The pretense that it exists, that is what critical race theorists argue against.
That slavery took place, or that your great-great-great-grandfather was a hero, because I'm saying that I want people tested when they are in school to see if they are good at school, then what you're purporting to push now is just nonsense. And it's just sheer bullshit, Malcolm. It's just bullshit.
No, but I think it's also...
Wait, we can swear on this program? Dude, I gotta go on the Bill Maher show. The first time I went on Tim Pool's show, he asked me not to swear early on because it can affect YouTube monetization. It's on HBO. Oh, yeah, it's on HBO. So that's why I didn't swear the times that I was on Tim Pool's show. But if I go on Bill Maher's show, I can swear all I want. I'm going to drop all the slurs. No, I won't. That was a joke. Not a good one either. Don't be like me. Be better than me.
A leap to say that he thought that was bullshit, because that's not what it is. I mean, are we talking about 2021? Or are we talking about 1861? Because
the point is, can we talk about 1861 and 2021?
Yes, we can. And
you just did.
I don't know who's against talking about history.
Well, I mean, I understand that they want to, in Texas, they're talking about removing references to the Ku Klux Klan. They're talking about removing. Well, I mean, come on.
That's Texas.
How can you watch Forrest Gump?
Wait, that's Bill Maher. That's a pretty bad counter argument. That's Texas. It's the second most populous state. Third? Second? It's either the third or the second most populous states in the Union. Second? Yeah, okay, second. Yeah. It's pretty important.
Without even knowing who Nathan Bedford Forrest is, right? I mean, these are people who are historical figures who did bad things. No one is actually saying...
Oh, wait, really quickly. I'm sorry, you're right. Somebody in chat just pointed it out, okay? What was the county that Ben Shapiro said they were lowering admission standards on? He could have been lying on that. I went off on a tangent, but hold on. Clark County admission standards. It's Ben Shapiro. We should never, ever, ever assume. Does anyone have a news article about that? Clark County School District Superintendent Jesus Hara defended grading reform during a back-to-school address Tuesday. They changed the grading policy. It will allow students to revise assignments and retake tests and will eliminate some behavioral factors like attendance and participation from grades. This isn't critical. What? This is good, isn't it? So I'll explain why this is good. Okay, so as you all know, American school systems suck, all right? There are other countries that do it way, way, way better. For example, doesn't Finland not have homework? Apparently not having homework can be pretty cool. I don't know. So here's why this is good, okay? First of all, and I want to be totally clear about this, basing grading off attendance and participation from grades can be pretty fucked up, okay? Depending on the circumstances of a young person's life, whether they have family members who are injured, whether they live in an area that is filled with crime, whether their parents can drive them to school reliably, a bunch of stuff like that, their attendance may suffer even if they know the shit from the class, okay? The only reason kids are graded on attendance is because we expect them to treat school halfway like a daycare and halfway like an educational system, okay? That's one. And for two, retaking tests and revising assignments can be a way at getting better on the material. Guys, you remember being in school, right? It's been a while for me, but I remember this much. If I was in math and I bombed a test and we just moved on to the next chapter, that information, I never learned it afterwards. If I bombed a test and then we move on to the next chapter, all the information that I got wrong on that test is just lost to me, and I don't have to worry about it again until the final test at the end of the semester. But going over tests gives you the opportunity to reflect on things that you messed up on. I think that's a good thing. I just think that's a good thing, you know? It's actually because of funding. Schools lose funding if student attendance is low. Yeah, that's just... There are a lot of negative externalities there. A lot of negative externalities, okay? Yeah, okay, this is not critical race theory. It just might be a better way of doing schooling, you know?
Saying we want to go back and erase everything and restart and talk to you about these things. Critical race theory is a subject because the Republican right has made it a subject. No real school organizations are mandating this for kids.
I hope every Democrat in America takes your perspective, and they will be shellacked at the polls. Roy Teixeira just wrote a piece, the emerging Democrat majority, Roy Teixeira, he just wrote a piece about what he called the Fox News fallacy, a tendency of people on the left to believe that just because Fox News mentions something, it can't be real. The reality is, a lot of this stuff is taught.
Just a second. Google Trends. Critical race theory. Yep. Critical race theory, the theory, has been around for a while. But in terms of common discourse, it's a bullshit moral panic. Nobody talked about this until the right decided it was time to talk about it. Which, hey, the peak of which was, let me see, 2 months ago. Wow. I guess in March 2012, something happened? I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. Just, yeah.
Taught in schools.
You mean like viruses?
Well, okay.
Well,
Can I?
Now I'm just...
I don't know.
Now I'm just... confused.
Can I just,
what you're talking
as far
about.
as what people are experiencing in their lives, in their schools.
Yeah.
Okay, you're right. There are states, like from the old Confederacy, I think, who do want to airbrush history. That's not...
Who currently do, by the way. Their textbooks are currently airbrushing history. So many Americans grow up believing in the lost cause myth, that the North started the Civil War, and that the South, it was about states' rights and blah, blah. This happens. This already happens. This is not like a new push. It's been going on for a while.
I think the majority in this country. If you ask me critical race theory, if you say, does that mean teach history unvarnished? I would say yes. Then I'm totally for critical race theory. If you say, does it mean acknowledging that racism persists today? I would say yes. Teach that.
Okay.
Should we have remedial means? That's like affirmative action. There's lots of people who are against that. I'm still for that. I still think when you read the statistics...
I keep expecting that he's going to go off and say how he's opposed to something, but he keeps going like, yeah, I'm in favor of that. If critical race theory means that I get to go back to my Hollywood villa and watch a gaggle of muscular black men have sex with my wife, that... No, I don't know where I was going with that. I don't... it's just...
And I have some of them here. Blacks earn 40% less, 90% less family wealth, high poverty high schools, 72% blacks to 31% white, live 6 years shorter.
I think it's okay to, guys, I think it's okay to say blacks if you say whites right next to it, right? That doesn't, I don't know, that doesn't ring any alarm bells in my head. If you're saying like this percentage whites, this percentage blacks, I don't think there's anything inherently like weird about that. I'm pretty sure I've done that.
Half as likely to go to college, 8 times more incarcerated. These are real statistics. The question is, wait, what do we do to address them?
That's a really good question, okay? The systemic biases are real. What do we do to address them? And of course, Ben Shapiro has to take the L here. Ben Shapiro's answer to this has always been black people need to fix their culture, black people need to work harder. That's always been his responsibility, or his response, the individual responsibility.
These are real statistics. You think we should address them? You think we should address them, right?
What's that
the question
face?
is, what are we doing about it? Because if,
Hey,
if critical race theory means making children in school fixate on race, I'm not for that. If it makes, if it's about collective guilt, I didn't do anything to your great-great-great-grandfather. I don't want to be responsible for that. If it's about, you know, a toxicity of just from being born white.
Okay, guys, I understand we're all soy-facing here, but can we reflect on something? Does this not perfectly indicate how much of a facile, hollow moral panic this is? Because everything he's talking about, nobody wants. The things he says he's in favor of having taught are real history, the existence of modern racism. He's in favor of that. And the stuff he doesn't want being taught is made up bullshit that, like, some teachers have done, and there have been Twitter leaks of the thing, but, like, broadly, like, these aren't the goals, you know? So he's against the stuff that we're against. That's good. He's in favor. Bill Maher is not crazy far left, but he seems to want what we want. Now, we might disagree on the particulars, but fundamentally, there is agreement here.
If it's about dividing everybody into oppressor and oppressive, oppressed and oppressor, I'm not for that. So there are things that are being taught and are going around that I'm not for, that if that was critical race theory, I wouldn't be for.
I agree with you, and I don't think that's critical race theory.
But
okay. So okay, good. He acknowledges that stuff like that isn't what he wants to push for. Good. Some people, in an effort to come off as a very strong, like, lefty, will bite the bullet and accept and defend all of, like, the bad sort of outlying weird race guilt stuff that gets associated with CRT. Okay, so he's not doing that, and that's good.
No, I think what's happened
Ben
here.
looks mad.
I think that what's happened here.
Wait, what did he say?
I think what's happened here.
The no true Scotsman fallacy
I
is
think
very
that what's
tiring.
happened.
Something fallacy is very tiring. The no true Scotsman fallacy. That's it. Wait, who used a no true Scotsman fallacy? Oh, because that's not CRT. Oh, yeah, of course. It's a no true Scotsman fallacy to say that something isn't CRT when it's objectively not a part of CRT. Okay.
Here, as this terminology, sort of like defund the police, has been hijacked and been framed around the left as that they want to do all this, they want to rip down the entire social fabric of America, and they want us to be guilty about everything. I want you to teach history. I had a lot of people in the military. Hold on. I had a lot of people in the military, senior officers who had to make life and death decisions, who were total morons about the cultures and institutions and countries we were going into, and people died because
so I have
of
a
that.
question.
I don't need that here.
If we agree that history should be taught, why are you defending critical race theory, which is not history?
Did I not just say
what? What? Hello. You claim you want history taught. However, I noticed that you're also in favor of mathematics classes and basic geometry. Can you explain? Sir, can you explain this to me? What? He's happy because he knows it's dumb too.
A moment ago that I think that term has been hijacked, and that's not what we're talking about.
Okay, so let's say critical race.
I'm going to go back and repeat that I didn't say that.
Okay.
You are literally defending critical race theory by redefining it as just teaching history, which is a cheap semantic trick, and you know it.
Is this what you do on your show? Because it sucks.
Well, hold on. He didn't do that. He just said that this weird white guilt, like, we want to make all your children hyperfixate on race, isn't a part of critical race theory, which is true. Didn't Ben Shapiro acknowledge from the beginning that critical race theory, as it's known, isn't really taught in schools? Like, pardon me if I'm misremembering, but I thought at the very beginning, Ben acknowledged that actual critical race theory isn't really being taught in schools. The most he said was being done was that a sort of watered-down derivative version. So who is he to claim that this guy's being dishonest by clarifying what critical race theory is?
Malcolm, Malcolm, I appreciate that, but I will comfort myself tonight by sleeping on my bed made of money.
I'm sure we have an adult. I'm sure we have another adult subject to talk about.
Well, how about that Andrew Cuomo?
He's so mad. Oh my God. Oh my God, he's so mad.
by sleeping on my bed made of money.
I'm sure we have an adult.
Oh, he's so
You know, Malcolm. Malcolm, I appreciate that, but I will comfort myself tonight by sleeping on my bed made of money.
I'm sure we have an adult. I'm sure we have another adult subject to talk about.
Well, how about that Andrew Cuomo? I tell you, he's.
Oh my God! It's the way he didn't really defend his point. No, he got mad. He got mad. Okay, guys, I just want to say, if you're a successful public figure, there is literally no L larger than ignoring the point and just saying you make a lot of money doing what you do, okay? There is nothing bigger, okay? Imagine if I was debating, like, some angry conservative or whatever, and I didn't have a response to what he had to say, and I was like, yeah, well, I have a lot of fun making money on my show, and then I hang up on him, like, ooh. What a weak response. Lamau, the fact that Bill Maher's audiences didn't know when to clap anymore, that's kind of true, you know? That's kind of true. Ben did the same thing with Andrew Neil and the BBC. Yeah, he did, didn't he? Oh, man, is that Ben Shapiro's, like, trigger tell, you know? When he's going off the, wall, he starts talking about the money he makes? Man, maybe Ben Shapiro should just stick to his show.
And
I have an entire list on my website, sir. On my list, I have an entire website of dumb, bad things that I've said.
I'm simply trying to point out some of the things you've said that seem to me to help to stoke that anger. For example, you said Israelis like to build, Arabs like to bomb crap and live in open sewage.
Well, as I say in an article entitled, here's a list of all the giant, bad, dumb things I've ever said.
Was that dumb?
Well, yes, that's a dumb tweet. And not only, but it is also important to mention that the next few tweets clarify that that tweet is specifically referring to the Hamas leadership, which, by the way, a BBC...
Okay, that doesn't save you, Ben. That doesn't save you at all. If somebody said, like, dude, why are blacks so bad at civilization? And then later you were like, I meant the Black Panther Party. Like, that doesn't help.
Seen as relatively reticent to condemn.
No, actually, it wasn't what you went on to do and say, you are correct about the slur on Arabs. It's not all Arabs that want to live in open sewage and blow things up. It's just Palestinians, you went on to say.
No, it says the ones who take sides against Israel in the Israel-Palestinian
population is rotten to the core, you went on to say. Not Hamas, the Palestinian Arab population.
I say that by...
Make sure you don't equivocate Hamas with the Black Panther Party. Let's be real. To conservatives, they're probably like the same, right? No, I just mean like a group they don't like. Like, oh, I don't mean this entire like racial group. I mean a tiny, tiny minority of them that I especially don't like. But yeah, in case anyone's curious, Hamas cringe and Black Panther Party based. Let's be clear.
Poll numbers, they elected Hamas. They educate their children in school that Israel should be obliterated, sir.
I guess...
If you want to read... You know, honestly, this is a giant waste of time in the sense that the entire interview is designed for you to shout slogans or old things that I've said at me. I don't see how this forwards the debate. You talk about undermining the public discourse. It seems to me that simply going through and finding lone things that sound bad out of context and then hitting people with them is a way for you to make a quick buck on BBC off the fact that I'm popular and no one has ever heard of you.
There are not many bucks to be made on the BBC, unless...
Guys, first of all, if you know who Andrew Neil is and you know the reputation that Andrew Neil has, this is a phenomenally stupid thing to say.
Like American broadcasting, Mr. Shapiro. The point I'm trying to make is that your words are hardly designed to produce the consensus and understanding that the book seems to want to produce. That's my point, that you write about, you know, Judeo-Christian culture and so on, but so much of what you've said in the past would seem to turn its back on Judeo-Christian culture.
You're lecturing me on Judeo-Christian culture after you call the pro-life position barbaric?
I just asked you a question.
And I asked you a question. You failed to answer a single one of mine. Frankly, I find this whole thing a waste of time.
I'm sorry. I have a whole video on this BBC interview, but basically Ben Shapiro went on to promote his new book, and Andrew Neil over here. By the way, Andrew Neil is a conservative. He's not just a regular conservative either. This guy is like an old guard conservative, okay? And he and Ben Shapiro called him like a triggered leftist or something. Like, this is so... Oh, God. He said he's to the right of Thatcher. Yeah. Yeah. No. Andrew Neil's insane and everything, but it's just funny that even that's like too much for Ben Shapiro to handle.